It is 2:30. It is the 23rd day of November, and I am your grumpy guide to all things gaming. Bah humbug. I thought, with all this hullabaloo around the Mandalorian and the child and the general wackiness that is that story, it'd be a good time to revisit explaining what a McGuffin is and how you, as a storyteller, dungeon master, can use a McGuffin to move your story along. Because, let's face it, the child, Baby Yoda, is a McGuffin. So what is a McGuffin? Well, the best known, the most perfect example of a McGuffin is the Maltese Falcon from the famous film noir starring Humphrey Bogart, The Maltese Falcon. It is the stuff dreams are made of. It is the intangible, incorporeal idea of a thing that moves the story along. The whole plot of the Maltese Falcon is trying to go from point A to point B to acquire the Maltese Falcon, only to find out at the end it wasn't what they thought it was, but they still move on because of what it represents. Another example would be the One Ring. The One Ring is a MacGuffin to move the story of the Lord of the Rings along. Another example in current pop culture is the child / Baby Yoda from The Mandalorian. Besides being a merchandising gimmick, the child is a MacGuffin. It exists to move the story along. The child itself, is it important? Is it not important? No. What's important about the MacGuffin is that it is what it represents. It represents the impetus of the story. It represents the thing that begins and ends the journey. And every aspect of the journey is somehow directly or indirectly related to the MacGuffin, the thing that moves the story along. It doesn't have to be a thing. It's just the idea of the thing and the idea of moving the thing, moving towards the thing, antagonists getting in your way to prevent you from achieving the thing, knowing that at the end, the MacGuffin is, as again, the Maltese Falcon shows us at the final scene, the stuff that dreams are made of. The achievement of the MacGuffin is not the goal, because at the end of the Maltese Falcon, they don't actually achieve the Maltese Falcon. Or do they? It's the big question, It is more important to them to continue the quest for the unattainable MacGuffin than actually have what they receive in their hands at the end of the movie. Is it the real Maltese Falcon that they have at the end? Or is it a fake? Doesn't matter, because they choose to continue looking for the idea, the stuff that dreams are made of. The One Ring is the impetus to move the story along of Lord of the Rings. It is the MacGuffin. Without the One Ring, would the story still have happened? Would Aragorn still assume the throne? Will the Dark Lord would these things move along? Maybe, but it is because the story is centered around the acquisition of the artifact, those who want to achieve the goals of the artifact, and those who stand in the way of the goals of the artifact that tells the story. Which brings us to Baby Yoda and how you, a storyteller, can use the time-honored tradition of a MacGuffin, of a thing, to move the story along. Because again, it's not about achieving the MacGuffin. It's about the story and how the MacGuffin causes the story to move, how the MacGuffin creates conflict to stop the story from moving forward, how other individuals come in your path who are all directly or indirectly related to the MacGuffin. The MacGuffin, the child. The Mandalorian has acquired this thing. He is trying to get the thing from point A to point B. Along the way, circumstances happen directly or indirectly related to this thing to either move his story forward or to stop his story and take his story on a new direction, or to teach him lessons. It is the the heroic journey. The Mandalorian is leaving. He is being changed by the events and the individuals he encounters. And by the time at the end of the story, he will be a completely different person. The goals of the story will have achieved because of the MacGuffin. You as a DM, Game Master, can use that intangible concept of getting this object from point A to point B, or just trying to achieve the object, or, just the idea that the object exists and people want it and other people are going to try and get in your way to get it. And maybe when you get the object, it's not really the object, it's the idea of getting the object. So another object or another MacGuffin then presents itself to move the story along. It is the heroic journey. It's the never-ending quest. It's Indiana Jones going after the Ark of the Covenant. The story happens whether Indy's there or not, because the MacGuffin is the impetus of the story. Anybody could have, been there. It just happened to be Indy. The child is the MacGuffin of the Mandalorian. It is the impetus that moves the story along. You as a DM can use this time-honored tradition of the MacGuffin to take your story along. You present the idea of something. It can be a tangible something that the player characters hold in their hands at the beginning, or it can be a tangible something that they are trying to achieve. You have to get to this thing to do this thing to get this thing. Classic storytelling. Then the story moves, but always the goal is the MacGuffin. Get the MacGuffin to the place. Destroy the MacGuffin. Move the MacGuffin. Achieve the MacGuffin. The MacGuffin doesn't have to be a thing. It's the idea of moving the thing forward, achieving the thing, destroying the thing, getting to the thing, finding the MacGuffin. Because the definition of the MacGuffin is nothing. It's not anything. It's an idea. The Maltese Falcon is not important because of what it is. It's important because of what it represents and the idea of the Maltese Falcon. And the story moves towards the climax of achieving the MacGuffin, achieving the Maltese Falcon. But at the end, the characters decide to continue forward. They're left, they leave, they go on because of the adventure that they had and what the quest meant to them, and they don't want it to end. So there's another MacGuffin to move the story forward. And as Humphrey Bogart says, what the Maltese Falcon represents, what the MacGuffin represents, is not the thing that he holds in his hands. It's what it represents it's the stuff dreams are made of. The MacGuffin represents the dream, the idea of the adventure, the events that move the adventure forward, the events that turn the direction of the adventure, the events that stop the adventure, it has to go back. The Mandalorian is a perfect example, sometimes extremely heavy-handed, like Season 2, Episode 2, of the use of the child as a MacGuffin. Moving the story forward, changing the direction of the story, changing who the Mandalorian is from the moment we meet him to Season 2, Episode 4. He is not the same person. And as the story continues to the end of Season 2 and hopefully Season 3, the Mandalorian will continue to change as he proceeds with the adventure that the MacGuffin represents. And if the child is ever removed, then the MacGuffin will be either to reacquire the child, or there'll be a new MacGuffin to move his story along. So that is how you as a DM can use this. You present something at the beginning of the story, a tangible thing that they can hold in their hand, like the child, or an intangible thing that might exist at the end of the adventure, like the Maltese Falcon. And then you present a series of events that move the story forward, or change the direction of the story, or change who the characters in the story are involved as their interaction with the MacGuffin, or with the idea of the MacGuffin, moves the story along, changes who they are, changes how the story is told, and also the understanding that there are other individuals who want to acquire the MacGuffin or stand in your way from getting the MacGuffin. But at the end, it's all that's what's important. The MacGuffin is not important. The child is not important. The child is just what is a representation of the journey that the characters in The Mandalorian are taking. And the child presents the beacon for positive character growth, negative character growth, the story moving forward, the story hitting obstacles, the story changing, the directions of the characters changing. It's all part of the steps that the MacGuffin takes to achieve its goal, which is taking the characters on the adventure, presenting them with a series of challenges and conflicts and moral choices, changing them, and then, of course, just presenting them with new reasons to continue moving forward with the idea of forever out of their reach is the actual end goal. And when that end goal is achieved, i.e. Frodo throwing the ring in the volcano, they have learned their lessons, they have changed, they've all become new people. The story comes to an end, some for good, some for bad, until a new MacGuffin is presented. So, there you go. Hopefully I have somehow explained that idea of what a MacGuffin is. The MacGuffin is a storytelling prop that you can use to move things forward by giving the characters a thing or giving them the idea that that thing is at the end of a path that they have to take, and that a series of events will happen to move the story forward. A series of antagonists will encounter them to move the story in a different direction. The story will not play out the way you think it's going to play out, but at the end of the story, the MacGuffin has achieved its goal of either getting from point A to point B, or you finally holding the MacGuffin in your hands. But again, the MacGuffin is not what's important. It's the adventure of the MacGuffin that's important. Again, because what the MacGuffin represents is the stuff dreams are made of, the idea of the story. So the child is a MacGuffin. If you appreciate this content and want to hear more, comment down below. If you don't appreciate this content and think I should shut the fuck up, comment down below. If you haven't had a chance to subscribe yet and want to know what's going on with all the OG GM adventures, please consider subscribing. Help me hit 300 subs by the end of the year. I will talk to you MacGuffin losers later.